Hey, I'm a case for Arkansas, and thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to share 6 shocking Arkansas crimes, starting out with the shocking murder of John Melbourne Jr. Then I will discuss the manslaughter case of baby Waylon Heyns. Then is the murder of David, Barbara, and Andria Flick. That case just gets to me, not just the murder, but the sentence, or should I say resentencing. Next is the murder of little Malik Drummond. They searched an entire town for him. Then I will talk about Alissa Reynolds and her story. It is a wild ride. And finally, the murders of innocent Justin Thomas and Shelby Riggs. If you could please subscribe and like this video, I'd appreciate it.
On August 19th, 1996, John Melbourne Jr. lost his life at the hands of his friends. What happened? In 1996, Robert Dimer was renting a house at 1123 North Spring Street in Harrison. But Robert lost his job, so he allowed his friend Jason McGeehee to stay there and take care of the bills and stuff. Jason McGeehee and some other friends stayed there. It was Jason McGeehee, Candace Campbell, Benjamin McFarland, Christopher Epps, John Melbourne Jr., and Anthony Page. So while they were staying in this house, Jason McGeehee had a check scheme going. He would write bad checks and they would cash them all around town. That was how he was getting money. On the day of August 19th, Jason had John Melbourne Jr. take a check into Cooper's Shoes on the square in Harrison. John went in there and was trying to buy a pair of shoes, but the check wasn't filled out properly. So John left, and eventually he came back with the check filled out properly with Anthony Page with him. John was able to purchase the shoes, but the owner got suspicious and called the bank to verify that the check was authentic. It wasn't, so the owner called the police. When the police came, they saw that Anthony Page and John Melbourne were across the street from Cooper's Shoes, just hanging out on the square. So they went and arrested John Melbourne Jr. When police took John in, John must have told them something about the check cashing, because police went to 1123 North Spring Street, and when police went there, Candace, Benjamin, Jason, and Chris were all at the house, but they hid in the back. But they hid in a place that they could see what police were doing. Police went to a spot where they were hiding stuff under the house, and so they became convinced that John snitched on them. Later that day, Chris Epps and Benjamin McFarland saw John Melbourne in town and told him to come by the house. So John did. When John came by the house, right away, Jason McGeehee was questioning him. He was obviously upset because he thought John snitched on him. John denied snitching, but Chris attacked John. And then Benjamin McFarland joined in, and they were beating John. They beat him for over an hour. They beat him for almost 2 hours. I believe McGeehee also joined in. Candace Campbell also hit John. The attack was brutal. During the attack, John was sprayed with Lysol. He was burned with a candle. He was burned with and forced to swallow lit cigarette butts. He was stripped naked and beaten with an axe handle. At some point, the group decided to go to a neighbor's house where Robert Dimer was visiting another neighbor and asked Robert to give them a ride to Utah. Robert complied. He said he would give him a ride, so they all piled in a car. In the car, John's hands were bound, and he was sitting between 2 of them in the back. Jason McGeehee decided to stop by his uncle's abandoned place in Omaha, Arkansas. When they got there, the group, all of them went in, including Robert. The main group, continued to beat John. Robert did at one point hit John, though he said that it was because they forced him to. After another hour or so of this, John was extremely weak. At one point, he escaped, but he only made it to the kitchen. And Jason McGeehee hit John in the head with a box fan. The others took sticks and beat him, and they burned him with candle wicks. So Jason McGeehee, Chris Epps, and Benjamin McFarland took John behind the house down a trail to a wooded area. Candace Campbell and Robert Dimer stay behind. Chris, Jason, and Ben took turns strangling John until finally John died. Even though they all headed to Utah, Chris Epps didn't make it that far. So the group headed to Utah. Some people in the group said that Chris Epps was whiny, so they dropped him in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He never went to Utah. At some point on the trip, Candace Campbell became aware that John died. So when the group got to Utah, Jason McGeehee went to his aunt's home in Elmo, Utah, and burglarized it. He took checks and a car from his aunt. While the group was doing all of this, Robert Diamert decided to leave and go back to Arkansas. So the rest of the group, the three that were remaining, Candace Campbell, Jason McGeehee, and Benjamin McFarland, go to Provo, Utah, and rent a hotel room with the stolen checks. On August 27th, 1996, Jason McGeehee, Candace Campbell, and Benjamin McFarland were arrested in Provo, Utah for using the stolen checks to pay for the hotel and driving a stolen vehicle. Because Candace Campbell and Benjamin McFarland were minors at the time, they went to juvenile detention. While Candace Campbell was in juvenile detention, she called her mom and told her mom what happened to John Melbourne Jr. Candace then also called the Harrison Police Department and told them about the murder. She told them where to find John's body. And so they went, and John's body was found about 150 yards behind that abandoned house in Omaha, Arkansas. When they talked to Benjamin McFarland about the murder, Benjamin McFarland made a statement. He said, "So 3 of us went out there, and the next thing I knew was just everyone was getting enraged. Then we went out there and just, I don't know, the mentality switched for all 3 of us. One thing led to another, and he was strangled. Who actually did it? Well, all 3 of us strangled him at separate times." He's saying when he finally lost his life, who was strangling him? Me. So I couldn't find the original charges, but Robert Diamert pleaded guilty to false imprisonment and second-degree battery. He was given a fairly short sentence, like 17 months, and probation. Candace Campbell was originally charged with kidnapping and first-degree battery. She pleaded guilty to false imprisonment and first-degree battery and was sentenced to 20 years on the battery, 10 on the false imprisonment. She has since been paroled and is living in another state. The other 3 were convicted of capital murder and kidnapping. McFarland and Epps both got life without parole plus 40 years. Jason McGeehee was sentenced to death. In 2017, Jason McGeehee actually had a execution date set, but his sentence was commuted to life without. Because of the Supreme Court's change in stance on minors getting life without parole, Benjamin McFarland was resentenced to 40 years and has been released.
I regret my involvement in that whole night. I wish I could change what happened. John deserved to live. None of this should have happened. I honestly don't know if killing me will make up for this. The state already has my life. That's a fact.
On November 1st, 2022, police were called to the home of Emily and Vincent Heyns for an unresponsive 2-month-old. When emergency services arrived at the home, they attempted to resuscitate 2-month-old Waylon Heyns, and those attempts were unsuccessful. Through police investigation, they learned that Emily and Vincent had been up all night long the night before, smoking marijuana and watching movies. Don't kill the messenger about marijuana. I'm just telling you what the police said. So Emily and Vincent didn't go to sleep until between 7 and 8 the next morning. As they were going to sleep, Waylon woke up and was hungry, so they gave him a bottle, and then they all 3 went to bed. Waylon, according to Emily and Vincent, Waylon went to sleep on his dad's chest. Around 2 p.m., a grandparent woke Emily and Vincent up saying, like, "Hey, I haven't heard anything from you guys. Not even the baby made a peep." And that's when they discovered that the baby was unresponsive. Emily and Vincent Heyns have been charged with manslaughter and endangering the welfare of a minor in the death of their baby, Waylon. They are each being held in the Benton County Jail on a $100,000 bond. The prosecutor has labeled this a death as a result of co-sleeping. The thing is that this is not the first time that Emily and Vincent have lost a child due to co-sleeping. July 23rd, 2021, their son Wyatt, who was about 4 months old at the time, died
and that was labeled as a result of co-sleeping. The prosecutor did say that in 2021, they were not under the influence of anything and they were not charged with any crimes in that case. But according to the prosecutor, this time they were using illegal substances and had impaired judgment as a result, which caused or contributed to the death of Waylon Heyns.
In 2023, both Emily and Vincent accepted plea deals. Emily pled guilty to endangering the welfare of a minor and was sentenced to 6 years probation. Vincent pled guilty to manslaughter and endangering the welfare of a minor and was sentenced to 10 years in the Arkansas Department of Corrections.
This is about Aaron Hodge. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 1996 in Craighead County. But Aaron was 17 years old at the time of his crime. So due to the Supreme Court ruling in 2012 that minors can't be sentenced to life without parole, he was resentenced this month to 30 years in prison. But let's get into his crime. So in 1995, Aaron lived with his mom, Barbara, his stepdad, David, and his half-sister, Andria. That they were the Flicks. Aaron went by Aaron Flick at that time. In October of 1995, Aaron's family had planned to go to Florida on vacation to visit family and friends, but they never made it. And when they didn't make it, the family started calling Rector Police, where the family lived, and requesting that they do a welfare check. On October 13th, police found out that Aaron Hodge was at the homecoming game in Paragould, that he had driven his stepfather David's truck to that game, and they went and made contact with him. They brought him back to the police station to talk to him. Aaron told police that he had heard from his family, but not that day, but said that they were supposed to return that day. The police did let him go, but they went to the home to investigate further. When they arrived at the home, Aaron was back home. He had been staying in like a garage apartment, at the home. So the police asked if they could go inside the actual home, and Aaron told them that the door was locked, that he couldn't get inside. But the police did notice that it looked like there were sheets on the floor. Aaron told them that the home was being remodeled. Police then got a hold of an employee that worked for David Flick at his transmission shop and had that employee take them to the transmission shop and get them inside. The employee had to kind of break in a little bit to get inside, but when he got inside, they realized that a toolbox had been broken into and money, along with a pistol, were missing from that toolbox. The next day, the police went by the house again. They saw Aaron Hodge outside with a friend of his, and they asked about his parents again. He told them that he would tell them at the police station. They took him to the police station, and after inquiring a little bit further, he said his parents were in the house, that they were dead. Inside the home, the police found blankets and pillows and stuff laying all over the floor. They found the bodies of the 3 family members and could tell that one had been dragged from the living room back to a back bedroom. They also found one spent .38 caliber cartridge on the floor and 4 additional cartridges in Aaron Hodge's bedroom in the actual house. A friend of Aaron Hodge's told police that Aaron had called him on October the 8th and asked the friend to take him by David Flick's shop at like 11 o'clock at night. When he got to David Flick's shop, he broke inside, took $30, a pistol, a gun holder, and some shells. After that, Aaron Hodge said that he needed to think, so he went by a cemetery, and then he went home. The next time that his friend saw him, he was driving David Flick's truck, which was incredibly unusual because David Flick didn't allow Aaron to drive his truck. Other people were able to tell police that they saw Aaron Hodge driving the truck throughout the week. He was using David Flick's credit cards to buy things and get money. He was throwing parties at the garage apartment. He was having people over, having sex, purchasing marijuana and alcohol. And like he told several people, he was having the best week of his life. When police found the bodies on October the 15th, they were in advanced stages of decomposition.
At trial, Aaron testified that he had gotten in an argument with his stepdad over being caught about stealing the gun, and he left. And when he came back, his sister and mother were dead and his stepdad was asleep on the couch. So he came and shot his stepdad, really pointing the finger at his stepdad for killing his sister and mom. But other people testified that his mom and his stepdad both had told people that they were afraid of Aaron. And really, like it was said in court paperwork, if Aaron loved his sister and his mom so much that he was so upset about their death that he would shoot his stepdad in retaliation, why did he let their bodies sit for an entire week before telling anyone what happened? Also at trial, Aaron changed the story a little bit to say that he shot his stepdad, but he didn't realize that his stepdad had already committed suicide. So anyway, he has stayed in trouble in prison and he will be getting out at some point. This is going to be about the disappearance of Malik Drummond. And just a forewarning, it will be 2 parts. So on November 23rd, 2014, Malik was 2.5 years old when he disappeared from his father's house. On November 23rd, 2014, police in Searcy, Arkansas received a 911 call that a 2-year-old child had disappeared from an apartment at 710 West Park. When police responded to the apartment on West Park, they found out that the child had just disappeared. Police were told that maybe the child had wandered outside when the father, Jeff Clifford, was sleeping and the father's girlfriend, Leslie Marcotte, was bathing with another child in the home. An Amber Alert went out and immediately the community responded. So many people showed up to come search for Malik. And they didn't just show up that day. They showed up day after day after day searching for 2-year-old Malik. They pretty much searched the entire town of Searcy, but no sign was ever found of Malik Drummond. Early on, police did notice a number of inconsistencies in the stories of Jeff and Leslie, but it wasn't until a year later, an entire year later, that the truth finally started to come out. On November 23rd, 2015, Leslie Marcotte interviewed with police in Springdale, Arkansas. And when she interviewed with police, she told a completely different story than what she had told before. She told police that Malik's father, Jeff Clifford, had been abusive to Malik in the past. She told police that Malik did not disappear on November the 23rd, 2014. Malik actually disappeared on November 20th, 2014. The story that Leslie had to tell police was honestly heinous. Leslie told police that on November the 20th, the kids in the house sat down to eat dinner. But on that day, like sometimes kids do, Malik did not want to eat dinner. So his dad, Jeffrey Clifford, took him to the bedroom to discipline him. And then later on, Malik drank another child's drink. And Jeffrey took Malik to the bedroom to discipline him once again, even though Leslie says that she begged Jeff not to. According to Leslie, when Malik came out of the bedroom the second time, he did not look okay and he did not act okay. So Leslie Marcotte was telling her story to police. She said that Malik didn't look okay and didn't act okay after he emerged from the bedroom the second time. She said that she begged Jeff to take him to the hospital, but Jeff refused. Instead, they decided to put Malik in the bed between the two of them that night. But at some point in the night, Malik's legs got cold and his belly swelled. Leslie says she tried to perform CPR on him and Jeff wrapped Malik in a blanket and said it was too late. She says that Jeff went and put Malik in the back of his vehicle and left him there. She says that Jeff drove to work with Malik in his vehicle that day. She said Jeff borrowed his brother's SUV that Saturday and that on the early morning hours of the 23rd, which was a Sunday, Jeff took Malik somewhere to get rid of his body. And that he returned around 6:30 that morning. She said after that, they decided to stage a scene, and the first idea that they had was to blame the disappearance on Malik's biological mother, but then they decided to say that Malik walked out the door.
I did read in one place that the police said that a cadaver dog hit on Jeff's brother's vehicle on November the 30th, 2014, but I couldn't verify that information. On November the 25th, 2015, police were able to record a conversation between Leslie and Jeff, where Jeff was basically telling her to stick to the story because police didn't have anything to go off of. On December the 1st, 2015, police were able to interview Jeff. At first, Jeff stuck with the story that he has always told. Malik must have walked out the door. Then he said Malik must have died from an accident, possibly a fall from the toilet. Jeff said Malik acted abnormal, but he didn't think that it was anything serious. Malik did have trouble breathing. He put him in the shower to try to revive him, and then went to the part where he put the body in his truck and then buried it on Sunday, the same thing that Leslie had said. Then police told him what Leslie had said. So he said that when he spanked Malik on the 20th, that Malik fell and hit his chest and abdomen on a bedroll. And that's what injured Malik, causing his death ultimately. Police did say that at some point in that conversation, Jeff did say that he felt like he was responsible for Malik's death. At some point, Jeff did take police to where Malik's body had been buried in an empty lot in Auvergne. I don't think that Malik's body was still there because of possible animal activity that I heard about in another interview, but police found evidence that a child's body had been buried there. Ultimately, Jeff was charged with capital murder and abuse of a corpse. Leslie Marcotte was charged with hindering apprehension or prosecution. Jeff pleaded no contest. He didn't accept responsibility, but he basically said they had enough to charge him. As part of the plea deal that he took, he was sentenced to 30 years for second-degree murder and 10 years for abuse of a corpse. Jeff, according to the ADC website, will be eligible for parole in 2015. Leslie Marcotte got 10 years for hindering apprehension. She ended up doing 105 days as part of a boot camp program before being released. She's been arrested several times in Sebastian County since that time. Some of these mugshots are her current ones.
On December 2nd, 2019, Alissa Reynolds had been discussing how she was planning to end things with her live-in boyfriend, Sean Cohn. When she left work that day, no one thought that that was the last time that they would see her alive. But 6 days later, on December the 8th, 2019, police received a call requesting a welfare check be done at 5003 Brack Place in Jonesboro. Those requesting the welfare check be done said that they had been unable to connect with Alissa by phone. They had received replies to text messages from Alissa, but they hadn't been able to actually speak to her on the phone. She was also supposed to meet someone for lunch that day on December the 8th. And instead of showing up, they received a reply saying that she had been in a car accident and was in the hospital in Jonesboro. While those that were concerned about her were still trying to connect with her, they went to her home. They saw dogs running around inside of her house. They saw a huge pile of blankets on the Chase Lounge. And those things were out of character for Alissa. She liked to keep her house clean. So when police did arrive to 5003 Brack Place, they automatically smelled an odor of decomposition. They made way into the house and were able to locate the deceased body of Alissa Reynolds under the pile of blankets on the couch. Obviously, someone had tried to hide her body and clean the crime scene somewhat. When police found Alissa's body, Alissa was found laying on her back. She had her hands in front of her. There were defensive wounds to her hands, including slices to 4 fingers. She had puncture wounds to her face, her neck, and her chest, and her arms. She was found wearing the same clothes that she wore to work on December the 2nd, and she also had her work badge on still. Sean, Alissa's boyfriend, was not in the home at the time that Alissa's body was found. Neighbors did report that they saw Alissa's vehicle around the neighborhood. They had seen Alissa's vehicle earlier that day, even though it was clear Alissa had been deceased for several days. Some people had seen Sean Cohn driving Alissa's Range Rover around town. It seemed like Sean Cohen had done a lot of things since Alyssa's death. He went to the Sprint store and got himself an iPhone and an iPad. He purchased a plane ticket. He went out to dinner and paid with Alyssa's credit card. On neighborhood surveillance videos, police were able to see that before Alissa returned from work on December the 2nd, Sean Cohen pulled away from the home in his Tahoe. Later, after Alissa had returned from work, Sean was seen walking back to Alyssa's home on foot and using a code to get into the garage. After a couple of hours, someone left the home in Alyssa's Range Rover.
Sean did have a criminal record. He was a parolee out of Baxter County.
Police learned that Sean Cohen had been discussing moving to Key West with friends of his. He said he wanted to move there to become a bartender. From Alyssa's autopsy, police learned that she was stabbed 18 times. Likely the stab wound that killed her was to her neck, which struck the jugular. She also had Sean Cohen's DNA under her fingernails along with her own DNA. When Alyssa's vehicle was located, it was found at the Memphis airport. Police learned that Sean had actually gone to Key West, Florida. They were able to arrest him as the plane landed. When they did arrest him, he was found with 6 of Alyssa's credit cards in his possession. Also in his possession was a list of countries that had non-extradition treaties with the United States. Sean had penciled in Cuba at the bottom of the list. Sean did have a jury trial. At trial, he said that he did come home on the 2nd of December to find Alissa deceased, but he knew if he contacted police that he would have been the one that was blamed for her death. So that's the reason why he said he did not contact police. Sean was convicted of her murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, with 32 years added.
On May 2nd of the year 2000, Arkansas executed the first female that it had executed in over 150 years. That woman that was executed was named Christina Marie Riggs. Christina spent a short amount of time on death row. Her crime occurred in 1997, so she was only on death row for less than 3 years. In 1997, Christina was living in an apartment in Sherwood with her 2 children, Justin Thomas, who was 5 years old, and Shelby Riggs, who was 2 years old. She was estranged from her husband, John Riggs, at the time of the crime. Christina was working as an LPN. I believe that she was working at Arkansas Heart Hospital at the time of her crime. Christina had struggled with depression for a major part of her life, so she decided that she was going to do a murder-suicide with her 2 children. Because of her work as a LPN, Christina could get medications that most of us couldn't. Christina stole potassium chloride from her work, and she also stole morphine. She was able to get Elavil, a medication, from her pharmacist. Elavil has a sedative property, and that's what she was going to use it for. So on November 4th, 1997, Christina mixed Elavil and water and gave it to her 2 children to drink. When they were passed out, she injected Justin in the neck with undiluted potassium chloride. Potassium chloride burns if it's undiluted, so it burned a great deal and caused him excruciating pain. So she injected him with morphine. She rocked him while the morphine was taking effect, and then she smothered him to death. She didn't try to inject Shelby because of what had happened with Justin, so she just smothered Shelby. She took her 2 children that were deceased and put them in her bed and covered them up. She then took 28 Elavil tablets herself and injected herself with potassium chloride. Christina wrote 2 suicide notes. One of them said, "I hope one day you will forgive me for taking my life and the life of my children, but I can't live like this anymore, and I couldn't bear to leave my children behind, to be a burden on you, or to be separated and raised apart from their fathers and live knowing their mother killed herself." The next day, when she didn't show up at work and didn't answer the phone, her mother came to check on her. That was November the 5th. So Christina left 2 suicide notes. Just my personal thoughts on the suicide notes. How dare you? I hate when parents do this. I couldn't bear the thought of my children thinking that I did something so terrible, so I murdered them instead. What are you thinking? Anyway, that's just my opinion. So on November 5th, her mother came to check on her.
She found them all and thought that they were all deceased. She called the police and ambulance came and took Christina to the hospital. I said Christina had injected herself with potassium chloride. That potassium chloride had burned through a silver dollar-size hole in her arm. So Christina went to trial in 1998. She tried to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. She blamed her chronic depression, but she was convicted by a jury. In the penalty phase of the trial, she wouldn't allow her attorneys to defend her. She said that she wanted a death sentence. When Christina was taken to death row at McPherson Prison in Newport, she was the only woman there, of course, since there aren't any other women on death row in Arkansas. Christina was executed May 2nd of 2000. Her final words were, "There is no way, no words can express how sorry I am for taking the lives of my babies. Now I can be with my babies as I always intended. I love you, my babies."
Thank you for watching A Case for Arkansas. Please remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share.